All right, so we got everything all cleaned up. We finished sanding the body. I just used naphtha and a shop towel to clean off all the dust and get everything all off of the body. Next step is to tape off the top. So what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to tape off the binding with this orange peel tape. It's the perfect width for the binding. I don't necessarily have to do that because the binding's not going to take any stain, but I want to try to keep the cleanup to a minimum, because if I do get stain on the binding, then I'm going to have to come through and scrape the whole thing. I'm expecting a little bit of stain leakage to come through, but I want to keep the amount of scraping I have to do on the binding to a minimum. And then once I've taped off the binding, I'm then going to come around and tape off all the edges so that all I have left is the surface. I'm also going to put some tape here in the body cavity, in the body pocket, in the pickup pocket. I'm going to stuff these holes with a little bit of tape just to kind of keep the stain from coming through. And yeah, so let's get started. Alright, so I got the binding all taped off. You can see that this orange tape does a really good job. It's pretty much the same thickness as the binding. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, the binding's not going to suck in any stain. I'm just doing this to try to keep the amount of cleanup I have to do minimized. Now we're going to put on a thicker layer of tape around the edge. Nice 2-inch wide painter's tape. Tried and true blue. There we go. All right, so now I'm gonna take a couple pieces of tape and kind of wad them up, sticky side out, and jam them in these holes as best I can. Yeah, so this one is a pass-through. Now for the fun part. It's time to stain. So what we're gonna do, what I'm gonna do, is I wanna accent the grain. I wanna get the nice veneer that we've got going on, and I want to get the grains to pop out. I want it to kind of look a little bit tigerish. So what I'm going to use is this color tone black liquid stain. I'm going to mix it with some lacquer thinner, about a 50-to-50 ratio, and I'm going to rub it on and let it sit for a couple of hours, and then come back and sand it off. And what that's going to do is that the open pores are going to suck in the stain. The closed pores aren't going to take it as much. So when I sand it all off, ideally what we'll see is the grain starting to pop out. I want to go really light. And the reason for that is this is a veneer and I don't want to sand through it. And if I go with too heavy of a stain, it'll penetrate too deep and I'll have a hard time getting it off. And potentially even burn through the veneer. So that's the part of the reason why I'm going to use a lacquer thinner, because I want it to dry fast. I don't want it to go deep into the grain, because then I can't sand it off. If I were to use a water base, it might go too deep, and that's not what I'm going for. When I switch to the next color, I'll actually end up using a water base because I want it to go deeper. So like I said, we're going to use the color tone black and a little bit of lacquer thinner. And I'm just going to use a simple little mixing cup. Before I get started, I'm going to put on my gloves, because this stain is strong. And I don't mean strong in terms of smell as much as I mean strong in terms of it dyes everything. That's why people use it. Now, like I said, got to be a little careful here. Don't want to overdo it, and you don't need much. A little bit of stain goes a long way. So I'm only going to use that much thinner. Really small amount. And they want you to go about 50-50. I think that's going to be about good. Mix this up real quick. And when we put it on, if it looks like it's not dark enough, I can always add a little bit more stain. So just going to take a rag, bunch it up, get a little bit of stain on here. Don't need much. That's gonna do it. That should be dark enough for us. Come back in an hour or so and see what we got, and maybe sand it all off. All right, so waited about an hour. Stain's nice and dry now. Time to sand it off. Gonna have to be careful here. Don't want to sand too much. But what we're trying to do is leave the open grain with the stain in it, get the closed grain, and get the stain off. I'm using the 400 again. This might be too fine. Yeah, this is a little too fine. I'm going to switch to a little bit more of an aggressive grit. So I cut a piece of 220 because I'm just not getting a lot of material off. I'm still really nervous, so I don't want to go too hard. And I also don't want to leave a lot of marks with this, so I'm just doing this to get some volume off, and then I'll go back to the 400 in a minute. So here we are. Just got finished sanding. Sanded for about 40 minutes. As you can see, the grains that I wanted to highlight are starting to pop through, which is nice. We've got bare wood, which will take the next stain. There's a couple of spots on here where the glue from the veneer is popping through a little bit. It's not too bad. There's a couple of little spots here and there, but I'm hoping that when I get the next stain put on here and do the grain filler, I'll be able to mask most of that. And a lot of this will be covered up by hardware and whatnot, but I know it's there. Like you can see, there's a nice glue line here. Not much I could do about it. I didn't want to sand too much because I didn't want to have it discolored, but for the most part, this is exactly what I was going for. So this is what's going to give it that nice flame maple look when I start to apply the next coat of stain. I did a poll a little while ago around how to finish this, whether or not I wanted to do more of a traditional amber or go with a red and black, like a deep red and black cherry type of top, or if I wanted to do more of a traditional Les Paul with a sunburst on it. And by and large, everybody really liked the idea of the sunburst with more of the amber in the middle going to red on the edges. But the more and more I started looking at the way that the body was designed and the seam that is on this veneer, I've decided not to go with that amber look in the center and the red on the outsides, because I didn't want this line to start to pop through. And if you look, you can kind of see where the grain doesn't match. So I think I'm going to save that option for a future guitar, maybe one that's got a solid maple cap rather than a veneer, and hopefully the grain pattern will match a little bit better and there'll be less of the glue in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a really good cherry red on top of this. I think the red is going to really pop on this. It'll be sort of the accent piece of the whole guitar, and that red with the black grains in the background are really going to make a huge difference. So I know that that's not quite what the poll said to do, but I think based on what I'm seeing this would do as I took off the black stain, I think it's just going to be the right approach. All right, so now that we've got the black on and we've got all the grain accented, the next step is to actually start laying down our color. So I did a Facebook post a week or two back, kind of asking people for their opinion on what color scheme to do with this. And overwhelmingly, everybody said they wanted to see sort of a cherry sunburst with more of a lemon in the center, something that was relatively bright with a nice blend. Now, I've never done this before, so we're going to give it a go. I'm going to start off with the lemon yellow in the center, put it down, and then I'm going to come back with the red on the outside and then attempt to feather and put it all together. So with any luck, we'll end up with that sort of sunbursty kind of pattern to it. Now this is sort of the point of no return. I mean, I can't really sand it off if I make a mistake, so fingers crossed that this ends up looking good. So I'm using the color tone lemon yellow from StewMac, and we'll see how well this yellow hits. And in the black, I did black with a lacquer thinner, so that way it wouldn't penetrate very deeply. In this one, I'm actually using water because I want it to get into the pores and penetrate a little bit deeper. Now I have to be a little careful because this is a veneer. I don't want to put too much water on it because I don't want the veneer to pull up. So we're just going to try our best to go in and see what we can do with the yellow. There's really no rhyme or reason to it other than just trying to get the yellow down. I'm going to go a little wide with the yellow because I want it to have sort of some orange fade where I lay down the red. but you can see the black accent really start to pop through. I think that's pretty good for the yellow. And we're going to save this and put it off to the side in case I need to come back with more yellow to blend it in. Next, we're going to do the red. I'm going to try not to touch the yellow at first and try to get a nice cherry red. So this is the cherry red from Color Tone. And then I'll start blending it in here in a little bit. Back in with a little bit more red. And that's the look we're going for. You saw over here, I'm looking a little bit at the veneer and it's bubbling a little bit. In a couple of spots, I can see the veneer pulling up where the water is separating the veneer from the glue. That's unfortunate. When we come through and do the grain filler, hopefully between grain filler and sanding, I can smooth that out. But that was some of the stuff that I was a little worried about. So it's a little wet in those spots. We'll have to wait and see how it ends up drying up, but hopefully that won't be too bad. It doesn't look like there's too much bubble, but there is a little bit. So that's one of the things that you got to be careful of when you're doing more of a veneer, because that glue can really separate if it gets too wet. And I probably came in a little thin or a little heavy here with the water, and when I was doing the sanding for the black, I probably pulled it and made it real paper thin. So not a lot I can do about it, but hopefully when we do the grain filler, this will all work up nicely. So that's going to be it for this. Now that we've got sort of the front face of the body all nice and stained, the next video we'll come back and we'll do the neck install. I waited to do the neck install again because I didn't want the pores to get any glue on them and then not take stain. So once this is all nice and dry, I'll come back in, I'll glue the neck in, and then I'll take all the tape off and I'll do grain filler over the front, the back, the neck, the head of the neck, and get it all real nice and smooth and ready to go. After we're finished with the grain filler, we'll apply sealer and then we'll start the lacquering process. So stay tuned and we'll be with you again soon. Thanks for watching.